God, please help us set aside everything we think we know about ourselves, alcoholism, AA, and even you, God. We ask for an open mind so we can have a new experience. Help us see the truth. Amen. Okay, this is from the forward to the first edition. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing, no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. My name's Chad Payne. I'm alcoholic. Been sober since April 2nd, 2003. Okay, so some online etiquette here. This is a little outdated because we turn your audio off. But it says, please keep your audio turned off unless you're speaking to the whole group so we can cut down on background noise. When sharing or making an announcement, we ask that you turn on your video so we can see your beautiful face. However, it's not a requirement. If you feel uncomfortable showing your face online, we will still allow you to share. The recording feature has been turned off to honor our principle of anonymity. All right, welcome everybody to the online version of the regular Wednesday night open Big Book study meeting of the Primary Purpose Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you don't have to identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours. While this is an open meeting, membership in AA is limited to those who have a serious drinking problem and have a desire to stop drinking for good. Our seventh tradition states that each group thoughtful, self-supporting, declining outside contributions. If this is your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we ask that you be our guest. We're glad you're here and hope you come back and become a part of our lives. On the other hand, if this is a regular meeting for you and you can handle a couple of bucks, it really helps out as we only meet once a week. We're doing donations through Venmo. Ashley's got it posted here on the screen. If you go to Venmo and hit the menu button on the top left, select search people, and we are Primary Purpose at Group Austin. And I actually found out all you really got to search for is at Group Austin. Okay, announcements. We do a weekly email that just comes out once a week, usually on Monday or Tuesday. And it's got some announcements and things, and it also usually has the reading that we read and some notes on the reading based on what people shared. If you're not getting that and you would like to, go to austinppg.org. That's our website, austinppg.org, and contact the webmaster through the link. If you've already done that a couple times and you're still not getting them, just send me an email and I'll forward it over to Matt. We'll get you put on the list. Do we have any other announcements?
Yeah, we have. If y'all will look in the chat, there's several conferences coming up and some links that people posted beforehand. So there's a roundup and Capital Texas conference. The Zoom IDs are in there. And also I want to bring your attention to the earlier chat, and I will repost that here. Ramona is joining us tonight, and she had shared to would like for anyone who has a story or would like to share their and it may or may not be posted to the Grapevine, but really trying to get documents of people in all walks and phases of their recovery, going through their experience, strength, and hope right now in this time. So if you would look for Ramona and email her, and that's all I have.
Also, if you're interested in how to get our study guide, you can get a printed copy. I'll show it to you. Wait. Looks like looks like this. This is what we use. This is not AA conference approved literature. It's created by a member. Cliff Bishop did it years ago, and Myers publishes it. But anyway, this is the study guide we use. You can buy a printed copy for cost at, you can go to bigbookfixer.com, and Ashley will post that. And then if you want to download a free version of it, which prints at a big stack of papers, but if you want to download a free version of it, you can find that at the Dallas Primary Purpose Group's website. So you can just Google Dallas Primary Purpose Group, and you can find that there. Okay, we do a foundation meeting. We have a long tradition of doing a foundation meeting, at our regular meeting. Well, we have one recorded on the website. Let me just read this here. On the website, austinppg.org, we have a recording of the foundation meeting. If you're new to AA or our group and have not attended this meeting, we highly encourage you to check it out. It's a great introduction to what Alcoholics Anonymous and our group is all about. Freedom from alcoholism through the application and practice of the 12 steps as they were given us. It's kind of the need to know information. If you can imagine what someone walking into their first AA meeting really needs to know, what does it mean to be alcoholic? What kind of solution do we have to offer? How do you get that solution? That kind of stuff. What's so important about the big book? All that kind of stuff. That's included in that foundation meeting. So go to our website and check it out if you haven't already done it. Sponsors. Somebody tonight's looking for a sponsor. This is one of the coolest things that we've been able to do since we started doing this meeting online, is get people set up with sponsors. If you came here tonight without a sponsor, there's no reason to leave without one. It doesn't cost a dime, and it's part of what we do to stay sober. If there's anyone tonight looking for a sponsor, reach out by email, not on the chat. I know sometimes that gets confusing for people. Don't do it on the chat because I might miss it. But if you'll send me an email right here at my email address, we'll get in touch and we'll get you set up with a sponsor. This is for new folks trying to figure out how in the world you're supposed to quit drinking and what this AA thing is all about. But it's also for people that may have been sober a while or even been a member of AA for a while, and you just kind of feel like you're not really having the experience that you hear other folks talking about. So send me an email. We'll get you set up with somebody. Okay, page 3. Before we begin our study of the Big Book, we will review Tradition 2. This is on page 562 in the 4th edition of the Big Book, and Steve is going to read the short form and the long form for us tonight.
Thanks, Chad. Hey, everyone. My name is Steve, and I'm an alcoholic. Our second tradition states, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. And our AA experience has taught us that for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Thanks.
Nice job, Steve. It's interesting. That's the tradition where the short form is longer than the long form. Okay, in the spirit of the 12 traditions, our group conscience has elected to use a Big Book study guide to help us stay focused on our study of the AA Big Book. There are one or more questions for darn near every sentence in the basic text. The chairperson will read a question, and then a member will read the related sentence. It's okay to comment more than once in here, but please stay focused on the text at hand. Now, this part's important. It's probably the hardest thing to get used to at this meeting. Most every other AA meeting I've ever been to does something that's of extreme importance in AA, and that is we share our experience with each other. Experience, strength, and hope, and that's the lifeblood of AA. This meeting, though, is a book study, and as a book study, we're not really about sharing our experience. Now, it's really hard to go every time without getting a little bit of your experience in there, but we want to do that as little as possible. And some things you kind of got to watch out for. If the sentence starts with "when I came in," or "my sponsor said," or things like that, we're probably about to get too much into our own experience. So what we want to do is, rather than share our experience with the reading, we try to share on what the founders are saying, what it means and why they're saying it now. We're trying to get a deeper understanding here of what the book is saying. If comments get too general or begin to drift off track, it's the responsibility of the chairperson to redirect the discussion. So here's how to share. Select participants at the bottom of your screen, select more, and then select raise your hand. A little blue hand will go up in your box. And we will call on folks, and please be patient. Sometimes we get a little out of order, and also sometimes I press unmute like 100 times and it still doesn't unmute. So please have patience. And you know, I'm not really real good on computers anyway. But last thing before we get started, Ashley and I both have a 1936 Webster's Dictionary. And the reason we have this is because some of the words when the big book was written mean something a little different than what they mean today. I just had a guy call me the other day, and he was on page 88. It warns against, the book talks about we're in much less danger of excitement. And he was like, why would excitement be dangerous? Well, that's one of those words where if you Google the word excitement, you know, because we don't have to use dictionaries anymore, we got Google. If you Google the word excitement, today it means something a little different than what it meant when they wrote the big book, when you look it up in the old dictionary. So that's just one example. So that's one of the things we do here. And if you want to know what a word means or what it meant when they wrote the book, just virtually raise your hand, or actually you can probably put that in the chat to me and Ashley, and one of us will get it. Okay, so we're in the doctor's opinion. We started the book over at the doctor's opinion with our first meeting last week, and we read the letter that Dr. Silkworth wrote. And this letter is basically an endorsement of this program and this book. And the reason that's so important is because when this book was written, something that we kind of take for granted today is that alcoholics can help other alcoholics. But back when this book was written, that's the last thing you wanted to do, is send your, loved one who's an alcoholic to a bunch of drunks or listen to what a bunch of drunks have to say. So they started this book off with an endorsement from Dr. Silkworth. And what he does here, he wrote a letter, and then there's another some more stuff here that Bill wrote, and then he expands on that letter. And from what I understand, the next part of it that we'll probably get into next week is some excerpts from a paper he wrote for a medical journal. But right now we're going to get into this part in the middle between the letter and then the second thing that the doctor writes. And this is the stuff that Bill wrote. So Steve is going to read these 3 paragraphs. And in the 4th edition, this would be on Roman numeral 26. And if you're in a 3rd edition, it's going to be 2 pages off, and I'm not sure in which direction. So Steve, read these 3 paragraphs on Roman numeral 26, please.
You got it. The physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as an altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer.
Okay. So this is P3 in the study guide. What did the authors of this book request of Dr.
The physician
Silkworth?
who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows.
In Dr. Silkworth's enlarged statement, what fact does he confirm that suffering alcoholics must believe?
In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind.
What didn't satisfy us?
It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives.
I'm a little insulted. Was there any truth in them?
These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us.
Of what are we sure?
But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well.
What must be included to make the picture of alcoholism a complete one?
In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete.
Which part of the doctor's theory is of interest to alcoholics?
The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us.
Is our opinion considered valuable?
As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little.
As ex-problem drinkers, what of his theory interests us?
But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense.
What does it do for us?
It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account.
Do we favor hospitalization for the very sick alcoholics?
Though we work as well as an altruistic it has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer.
Great job, Steve. I appreciate it. Okay, we're open for discussion. First up is Barry. Okay, Barry.
Hey, how you doing tonight? I love reading this and thanks so much for cannot recall with sufficient force of memory the pain, suffering, and humiliation of even a month or a day or a week ago. Last night at another meeting, a gentleman picking up a chip for 40 years quoted that, and that was one of the first things I heard coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. And like it discusses in here, this solution that this book is offering has to be very complete. It is not simply a situation in which one thing is going to assist us. Later on, we're going to be reading a chapter called More About Alcoholism. And in that, we're going to read the stories of some gentlemen who have one thing in common. They understand the physical allergy. They seem to understand the mental obsession, but they will not be able to be successful in staying sober because they will not have the spiritual experience going through with this. So very early on as we're reading this, we're reading that this has to be a complete solution. Sitting there and relying on one thing is not going to be sufficient if we're actually going to have the happy, joyous, and free mentioned on page 133. And as we're reading this, and it's talking about the allergy, about the physical dependency upon alcohol. You know, I love that it does mention in here something about how it is that we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. Because to this day, that is one of the great services that treatment centers in the medical profession give us, safe medical separation from alcohol. Those of y'all who have been in the rooms for a long time are aware of the fact that alcohol, along with benzodiazepine, is actually one of the more dangerous things to just try and go cold turkey and get off of. If you can, I was able to, but if you are having trouble with it, that is something that is always valuable to us. But, you know, once again, as we look at this, as we read the stories in this chapter, as we read the stories and more about alcoholism, remember that Towns Hospital, where this gentleman worked, was was the premier area for treatment of alcoholism at this time. When it reading about stories about a guy staying staying dry white knuckle for 30 years, about how another guy is a hotshot accountant going up there and speaking to government agencies, and yet ultimately they cannot stay free from alcohol on their own power. Those stories are not exceptional. Those stories are exemplary. You've got to imagine that Dr. Silkworth, as he's looking over all these people, he probably sees stories that are more lightweight than theirs. And I also imagine it would be very easy for him to locate stories that are even harder than those, ones that would be absolutely unbelievable to some of us if we tried to read them today. And so, once again, these stories in which we're talking about the cost that it takes to stay off of alcohol, all of them apply to us, each and every last one of them. And, what we've got to do is we've got to read this information, and we've got to look for the holes in our own thinking. We've got to see where it is that we can make our own program stronger through the experience, strength, and hope of the people that came before us. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. That's good stuff, buddy. All right, Chip.
Hey, I'm Chip. I'm alcoholic. Hey, I talk really fast, and I'm trying to slow down, and sometimes it's strangle it, right? But I just, I thought it was interesting that last week that he didn't even sign his name in the first edition because he was scared of getting ostracized by scientists, because we're trying to understand something. There's something going on here that we don't quite understand. It's very cunning, baffling, and powerful. It's so baffling. I think it's so well hidden that it can escape consequences and blame. It's always the alcoholic's part for whatever the alcoholic, what disease of alcoholism gets us to do. It's not on the death certificate, it's not on the divorce decrees, it's not on the job losses or any of that. It's always our fault what we do when we're drunk. But there's something going on here. We're powerless over alcohol, and we're trying to expose it. And you ever see science in man's hands? It's like, okay, the world's flat. We know what we're doing. We're the center of the universe. We got it going on. We know. Okay, no, the world's round, but the sun circles around us. But now we know what we're doing. And then it goes, okay, the sun's the center of the universe, and we revolve around it. Now we know what we're doing. And I was trying to point out how arrogant scientists. And this guy was taking a chance. He was actually being humble. He said, "This is our opinion. We've not really quite understand. We got something going on here that helps them. So you might want to look at this, And he's being very humble. And he took a chance. I mean, scientists think, hey, if we don't say it is, it isn't. They think there's an authority. And for me, there's only one authority, and that's a loving God that he may express himself in our group conscious. That's second tradition we just talked about. So I try to. God's the only one that knows anything, but you can't tell scientists that they know stuff, And science is not intelligence per se. It knows nothing. It's nothing. It's just a method of knowing. It's not really something. It's an abstract concept, in fact. So it's not really intelligence per se. And I was just trying to point that out that Silkworth was being very humble, and we're trying to understand what's going on here. And it's affecting us physically and mentally and stuff. And so we can learn from everything's on the table. Let's see what's going on here, man, and try to understand it. And we might have a solution for it, And he even talks about it in the next letter. But he talks about this synthetic knowledge and wisdom. And he's very humble about it. And I was just thinking nowadays, whatever the doctor says, it's absolute authority, and they don't really know, man, as far as I can tell. Anyway, thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Chip. It's good stuff, buddy. All right.
I have some definitions if
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I can jump in. Actually, alcoholic. So first we have torture, an act or process of inflicting pain, to put torture, to punish, or to inflict pain, subject due to strain, wrench, or twist. That was torture. Altruistic is pertaining to or given to unselfish. And then I have one more, maladjusted. Maladjusted is badly or inadequately adjusted, out of harmony of one's environment, from failure to reach a satisfactory adjustment between one's desires and one's conditions of life.
Good stuff. Ramona?
Based on the history of AA, you have to understand the value of Dr. Silkworth's contributions. And in the forward to the second edition on page XVI, it said that this is what this is Bill W. saying, that he had also been greatly helped by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, a New York specialist in alcoholism, who is now accounted no less than a medical saint by AA members, and whose story of the early days of our society appears in the next pages. From this doctor, the broker had learned the grave nature of alcohol. And the grave nature of alcohol is we just looked it up in another study. Where did I put it? Grave is seriously dangerous, mortal, meriting considerable consideration is grave. So that's what he did, and that's the story where he got started. It's in the forward of the second edition. It's really interesting.
Good, I want to mark that page. Thank you. Okay, next up is Lil.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lil. I am alcoholic. Thank you for calling on me. So the things I want to point out that jump out at me are, in this statement, he confirms that we who have suffered alcoholic torture, and that alcoholic torture, and it brings me, and I too am referring to Roman numeral 16 in the foreword to the second edition, where Dr. Silkworth is saying the physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma. And you see, someone suffering from alcoholism, it's not about drinking. It's like damned if you drink and damned if you don't, because not drinking for an alcoholic is torture, because life just grinds on an alcoholic who does not drink, because alcohol is the solution to that tight knot in the stomach, and alcohol will dissolve it. And anybody who's alcoholic knows what that is. I did not have to be explained. That never had to be explained to me. And also, so the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind, because alcohol to an alcoholic does something for the alcoholic that it does not do for a normal person. And it not, as well as the allergy, which further down it talks about. So once you put the alcohol into the body, then the body craves more alcohol. And you think, well, I just changed my mind. But actually, there's the physical allergy and craving to alcohol once I put it into my system. But there's more than that. Like I said, for an alcoholic, it dissolves that knot, or the spring in the stomach, or the knot in the stomach. It just dissipates it. And so it goes on. Our bodies were sickened as well. And it's because alcoholics are wired differently than normal people. So our body, the alcoholic's body, is quite as abnormal as his mind. Because I have a mind that will continually take me back to alcohol, even though I don't think so, because it is subtle. In chapter 5, it says, it's baffling, it's powerful. It's baffling. If it wasn't baffling, we would be able to figure it out. And sometimes you sit in meetings and you listen to people how they all have it figured out. Meanwhile, it's baffling. And I was told when this line where it says, just because we were maladjusted to life, and I was asked by the person who took me through the book, did it actually, because I was told I was maladjusted to life, and did it ever satisfy me? to be told that I was maladjusted to life? No. World was treating me wrong. If you're anything like me, it did not solve anything. And so that's all I've got. Thanks for asking me.
Thanks, Lil. That's great. I'm working on it, Ray. There we go.
Thank you, Chad. I'm Ray Shepard. I'm a recovered alcoholic. This is going to lead to a seething cauldron of debate. It's impossible to not be embroiled in that. One of the things that I think we need to be cautious about is reading into what we're reading. This book, and we started off, you read this, Chad, in the foreword of the first edition. They are telling us the directions, precisely how they recovered from alcoholism, not what kept them drinking, but how they recovered from. Now, these 3 paragraphs that we just read are written by the alcoholics that wrote the book, not Dr. Silkworth. So this little interlude is what these alcoholics who authored this book are telling us. And one of the things that they are leading up to, is it said that we believe the body of the alcoholic is as abnormal as his mind. We were told that we were maladjusted to life, running away from reality, outright mental defectives. And then in this middle paragraph, this theory that Dr. Silkworth has, that we have, and they say it's an allergy. Silkworth is not going to call it an allergy. They call it an allergy. It interests us. Our opinion means little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we say his explanation makes good sense. And this is the last they talk about it in the book. They, the authors. Silkworth is going to talk about this the rest of his chapter. But the alcoholics really address this in chapter 3. And the one sentence that Bill actually writes gives us the focus of the book on page 35. What sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats the desperate experiment of the first drink? That's the one that's going to catch us. Not after we take the drink, but why is it that we go back to the drink cold, stone cold, sober? Not even thinking of a drink most of the time. Why is it that we pick up that drink and drink? That's the whole focus here. This type of alcoholic that Silkworth called hopeless, that he described Bill as, that's their problem. Why is it that we can't stay away from the drink? And so, as I said, this will be a seething cauldron of debate, but it's a great way to introduce what this book is all about. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. All right. Next up is Raquel, and you're ready to go.
Hey, hi everybody. My name is Raquel. I'm an alcoholic, and for me, what I see in this page that we read over and over again is the physical factor. I just see the physical factor. I don't see absolutely anything else, and I love it because this is the brilliance of this way of studying the book. The questions is what do I most believe? I love that the body of an alcoholic is as normal as my mind. So here it is something that is telling me this is a must right off the bat, to just be constantly trying to fight that, leave out that physical factor is not really going to help that much. And I also love the other question that you said, what didn't satisfy us? It did not satisfy me to see that I was just like maladjusted to life. I mean, I don't know, like I don't find that offensive because for me it was evidence. Like I knew something was really wrong. So I love that it says like this is the way that it explains. I think basically just to be focusing on this particular part of the physical factor of the disease is what I see over and over in this page. Thanks.
Thanks, Raquel. Okay, Jamie.
Hey, thanks. I was very curious about the historical situation around this letter because there are just so many things that are confusing to me, and I didn't know what was happening exactly with alcoholism, study of alcoholism, solutions for alcoholism, and I thought it was really interesting in the beginning of that chapter, or that section, it says, a well-known chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital. That's like all the information it gives. So I did some research on it. I think Barry mentioned Charles B. Towns in New York, but what I find really interesting is that in 1909, that hospital was founded by a life insurance agent who heard about a belladonna treatment from a country doctor. He brought it, this life insurance agent brought it to New York. He connected with Dr. Andrew Lambert, a well-known physician, and they started this hospital. And the treatment, the belladonna treatment, was a number of different herbs and hallucinogenics that they would give alcoholics over a 5-day period, and it was supposed to heal them. This was a hospital for the well-to-do. It was very expensive to get in there, and Bill W. went through there 4 times, and his brother-in-law paid for him because at that point he was broke. So Silkworth is saying that it didn't work with chronic alcoholics. So a big surprise, giving them hallucinogenics didn't cure them. So there really was very little success at this hospital, and it finally closed its doors in 1965. I mean, it was on Park Avenue. This was like a ritzy place. And so they started believing that a psychic change or a transformation of the addict's mind, body, and spirit was necessary, and the hospital didn't provide any of that. So just want to add that. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. I actually just recently did some research on this for Marty, Katie's sponsor, and found out some things that I didn't know, that this letter, I believe, was written. They're not exactly sure when the letter was written, the first one here, but I believe like in the fall of 38 or something, so just shortly before the book was published. And then the second letter is actually not a letter; it's excerpts from a paper Dr. Silkworth wrote for a medical journal. And I tried to read the article that he wrote, and I mean, I got through some of it, but he really gets into detail on some of the chemical differences or the way the alcoholic's body processes alcohol differently or whatever. And the funny thing is I've also now please don't take my word for this. If you're really interested in this, please research it on your own. But I believe that a lot of that stuff Dr. Silkworth wrote about on how the alcoholic's body processes alcohol differently turns out to not even be right, So it's kind of interesting on. But the thing is, what's very clear, to kind of keep it simple, is that once the alcoholic starts to drink, he loses control over how much he drinks. That's pretty simple. And then some people mentioned that the big problem is not that. The big problem is that stone cold sober, he picks up another drink and starts the cycle all over again. But a couple things I want to point out here. I'm going to try to channel Katie a little bit. I know she's going to hate to have missed this part, because one of the things that she talks about a lot is how there's some in AA who say, if you get the drink off of us, we're just normal people. And then there's some that say we're very sick, otherwise. And in this part of the book, not to, put this on anyone else or me or whatever, just in this part of the book, it sounds like the founders, their experience is that they've been told that they're maladjusted to life, in full flight from reality, and outright mental defectives. And it says, then he goes on to say these things were true to some extent in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. So just because you get the drink off of us doesn't mean for most of us that we can just go out and really operate well in this world. For most of us, it takes some work, even, you know, and some work on the, down here it talks about, though we work our solution on a spiritual as well as altruistic plane. That's what the solution is that AA has to offer. Now, the solution that hospitalization has to offer is to treat someone until their mind can get clear enough to kind of grasp the solution that we have to offer. And today we call that a detox, you know, get somebody into a detox and get the alcohol safely off of them for a few days. And it was common practice in a lot of AA to detox the alcoholic in AA, you know. There's some really interesting history about giving beer slow, you know, a little bit at a time, slowly, to kind of help an alcoholic detox. But the solution that they talk about here is spiritual, altruistic, you know. And I kind of, the way that I look at that is, it's kind of like, is spiritual is the work we do, the process of inventory, confession, restitution, prayer, meditation, you know, things like that put us in a position for the altruistic part, which is where we work with other alcoholics. And then the last thing I want to say about this before I move on to the next person is, I love this part where he says that when he's talking about the doctor's explanation, he says, it makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. And it's so cool when we 12-step someone, or talk to someone in the foundation meeting, or go into a treatment center or some kind of institution and explain alcoholism. And you've always got somebody kind of on the edge of their seat going, wait a minute. Now that makes sense, because the book talks about how we're a baffled lot, you know. That means that we know there's a real problem, but we don't get it. Like, why do I keep doing this? You know, it talks about that on page 23, where it says, if you ask him why he started on that last bender, chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense. And the way Charlie puts it is, well, when it gets down here, it says it, but once in a while he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is that he usually has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. And you know, the way Charlie puts it is, when you really ask a guy and he kind of gets down to it, why did you do this again? The guy's answer is, I don't know. It's just what I do. And this part of the book that I just read is talking about the first drink, whereas what we just read is talking more about what happens once we've already taken the first drink and we lose control over how much we drink. But either way, explanations of these two things are really valuable to us. When they, you know, it's where we kind of start going, oh, that's what I do. That's exactly what I do. And, you know, it seems that somebody understands. And even though, you know, what we're trying to do in that 12-step call is really give someone a shot of hopelessness, a fatal dose of alcoholism, you know, where they're going, oh no, if what this guy's saying is true, I'm in real trouble. And it seems that my experience shows that. But also, sometimes there's a feeling of, wow, this makes sense. This stuff has never made sense before. Now it makes sense. And it seems like this person, these people understand, you know, and I can relate to them, identify, which is really, you know, a cool experience for most of us. Anyway, I've gone on way too long. I'm going to call on Rena here. There we go.
Thanks, Dan. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Rena. And one of the things that I have found interesting is where the doctor's opinion is placed in the different editions. In the first edition, the doctor's opinion was page 1. In every other edition, it was in the X's and the B's and the I's. And the explanation that I heard was that they took him out of the part that was alcoholic. He was not an alcoholic, therefore he belonged back in the forwards and all that sort of thing. And I checked it out, and sure enough, it hadn't changed. He's still in the wings in the other editions. Thanks.
Thanks, Rena. Good stuff. Okay. Next up is Linda. And Linda, hang on. Let's see. There we go. Go ahead, Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm alcoholic and an addict. It's great to be here with all of you. It's really interesting, the doctor's opinion, how they go on, and everybody has said this over and over tonight, but that they really want us to know the hopelessness of our condition and that it is two-pronged. It's not just our thinking, this mental obsession that we have, that we can't get it off our brain, no matter how much it beats us up, no matter how hopeless we feel. The next thing you know, what are we thinking about? When we're going to drink again. And it talks about that, letting us know, like over the hammer, this is serious, that our condition is hopeless. It's torture. And then to go on and say, really hitting our ego here, we're mental defectives. We're basically, I don't know what that book says in the old dictionary, but that we're defectives. To me, it means I am broken. Okay. And to be maladjusted to life. Now, this is a person who in so many aspects of our life, and it says this, I'm not sure on what page of the big book, that so many areas, if we're just the normal person, that we haven't gotten so far off the deep end, that we're in hospitals and things like how down Bill W. went, but that we're so maladjusted to life, but in other areas we're not, that we can keep a job. We can pay our bills. Somehow we're still staying married, all these things, but that we're maladjusted. He just smacks us right here at the beginning of the book. I can see why before it was on page 1, why Bill wanted it on page 1, and not this part where nobody reads, where lots of people don't get into these deep studies. Then it says, as it goes on, the allergy is of interest. It's two-pronged. In fact, in the book, it says 6 times in the book, the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. Over and over and over again, they want us to understand that once we put the drink in our body, we cannot stop putting it in. It's not one drink, it's 5,000 bottles. The other thing I just want to mention is that line, that we work out our solution on the spiritual. Here's our bingo. He gives us our bingo right away. We can work it out. Guess what? We're in bad shape, but our solution, we can work it out on the spiritual and the altruistic. When I think about the spiritual, I immediately think about how it talks about in the big book that we come to a place where we are riding on a tandem seat bicycle and God is at the head of our lives and all things. And when we get to that place in our minds, when we own it with the deepest level of our heart, and we are authentic in the sincerity of our love for our Father, then it's only natural that we have a life on the altruistic plane, that we are here to do his bidding. Thank you.
Here's something cool. In this 1936 dictionary, in the new words section, here's allergy. It said, and this is the medical definition of allergy. Excessive sensitivity to certain substances. And it lists some examples of substances, such as germs, pollen, food, hair, cloth, mental or emotional excitement, physical conditions, excessive cold, which are harmless to most people. Thus, contact with these may cause a reaction to this substance. Anyway, kind of interesting. Okay. Next up is Kelly.
Hey everyone, my name is Kelly. I'm an alcoholic. I love, I remember first getting in the program, the first thing my sponsor directed me to was in fact the doctor's opinion, of course, after the forewords. And it is the first chapter, it is the first thing in the big book that really grabbed my attention. What we read today kind of directly correlates to something I was reading with my sponsee today, and I felt very, very encouraged by it. It says, like the disease of alcoholism, recovery is also progressive. At first, we learn not to fear the water, and then we learn how to swim. We move on to snorkeling, and we see below the surface. So there's a lot of steps in here. Then we get our oxygen tanks, dive deep, and discover that underneath there exists a whole new world we never before imagined, and it keeps getting better and better and better. So I was very encouraged by that. And also, it was talking about, if we have a broken leg in rehabilitation, we hope to gain maybe 80-90% of our normal function again. We rarely get back to where we started, but this says in recovery from alcoholism, however, we get back much more than we ever had before, even at the top of our game while we were drinking. 150 to 200% and more is actually a very achievable goal. So I can attest that's true in my sobriety, because I didn't start drinking to feel better. I started drinking to feel normal. I can actually, confirm that for me, since doing this program and working the steps and being involved in the fellowship, I have gotten much more better than I ever had before I ever picked up a drink, or in my best days of drinking. I feel better now and more balanced and more whole. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Thank you.
I think that's a pretty common experience, which is good news for so many of us. Okay. Marilyn?
Hey everyone. This is very interesting. We favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he then has a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. When they wrote this, they were not talking about long stints in treatment. They were talking about shorter periods of hospitalization. So that's an important fact. Understanding the allergy and how they separate the allergy, the two-pronged disease, allergy and the mind. But when they separate the allergy, our singleness of purpose is for alcoholism, because the effects that alcohol has on the body for alcoholics is different than any other substance. So an alcoholic working with another alcoholic. And the hospitalization, some of us will not be able to not drink in between meetings. Some of us cannot go to the next meeting and just wait till a meeting to not drink, because once we put alcohol in our bodies have a different chemical reaction. And as laymen, how this made sense to them. We're putting alcohol into our bodies and we don't understand why we cannot stop once we pick up that drink. So all of a sudden, Bill and the first 100 are saying as laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problems drinkers, as one alcoholic helping another, we can say that this explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. We take sometimes even just mouthwash, but we put that first sip or that first drink in our bodies. We want the second one even more. We want the third one even more. There's something different chemically going on in our bodies. How often, on page 24, how often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with this 6th drink, or what's the use anyhow? When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, the allergy, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And before that, it says we are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol whatever into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mentally sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. We're not bad people, we're sick people, and that's with our bodies. Altruistic, selfless. This is not a selfish program. It's about us transcending into selflessness. Easier said than done, but that's all I got.
Good stuff, Marilee. Thank you. Okay, Denise, we got a couple minutes here for one more.
Hi there. Well, gratefully, it won't take but a minute or two. But what keeps getting my attention is the theory. And when I look at the doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. And yes, I have a 1936 dictionary. I couldn't find the word allergy. Thank you for telling me it's the new word thing. But here it says a doctrine or scheme of things which terminates in speculation or contemplation without a view to practice, speculation, contemplation. And this just tells me that this guy's guessing and that this is the only thing. Yet, when we go back, and this is where my connection comes in, this physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma, but had failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue the spiritual remedy for his malady with the willingness he had never before been able to muster. Anyway, that's what I connected tonight. Is I kept going back to that word theory, how that theory from this doctor gave us a description that Bill was able to give to Dr. Bob. And so we began. So thanks.
Thank you. Good stuff. What a strong meeting tonight. Wow, I learned a lot. I got a comment here that asked me if it's illness or disease. Can you clarify? I'm going to just throw out a couple things that I've heard, but again, this is something you want to research on your own. I've heard that nobody uses the word illness anymore. We say disease, and that's why most people today call it a disease rather than illness. But here's something interesting that I've heard. That a disease is something that the American Medical Association labels certain things as a disease, and it's labeled alcoholism or addiction actually as a disease, but it's controversial among members and doctors and people in the medical field. So in AA, we try to stay out of that controversy, and we call it an illness. Now, that's just something I've heard. Take it or leave it. Research it yourself. It's an interesting topic. We are out of time. I've got a closing reading. Again, what a strong meeting. Wow, this is really a cool thing to be a part of. This is from page 164 of the big book as printed in As Bill Sees It on page 331. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. For the newcomer, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank you for a good meeting. Congratulations to our celebrants. Welcome to our visitors. And we have a tradition of closing with a 7-step prayer. And at this meeting, we have developed a tradition of unmuting everyone, even the folks who don't know that they're unmuted and may be doing something entirely different than attending the meeting. We're going to unmute everybody, and when you see that prayer pop up, then you just say it at your own pace. So here we go. Not creation.
Not willing that you should have all the power.
That you may rewrite every single
character stands in the way of my uselessness to you, stands in the way of my useful. Be straight as I go out here from your faith.
As I go out and do your bidding.
Your bidding, be mad.
Amen.